I just have a couple of questions to our audience. So thank you, our wonderful audience, for staying here late afternoon Friday. I hope that's going to be a very enriching panel. Who of you uses ChatGPT? Hands up. Who of you uses ChatGPT more often than Google search? Who of you thinks that they will continue using ChatGPT more in the future? Okay, you answer very good research questions. To give you an insight, and that's coming to our topic, and we are in a great place because the digital economy is going to be booming in Southeast Asia, and Singapore is positioning itself very strategically in that place. The projected value of that economy in 2030 is going to be $1 trillion. So everybody's exciting, and whoever you see, hundreds of exhibitors talk about services. But how often do we actually use and look under the hood and see where are these services stored and are taking place? And what are they powered by? So according to International Energy Agency, Singapore and Southeast Asia, much more broadly, will increase energy consumption in the next 10 years by 25%. That's going to be 25% of global consumption. And in 2050, Southeast Asia is going to consume more than the entire European Union. Now, a big chunk of that will come from AI and data centers. And listen to that, already next year, the whole consumption of data center is going to be estimated around the consumption of Germany in 1 year. You may have heard here in previous years that, for example, mining Bitcoin was very alarming because it took as much energy as Switzerland. We're talking about something much, much more serious. How serious are we talking actually about that? I'm very excited that we can tackle this problem with an exceptional panel. We have Benjamin, and representing different industries. Benjamin, from the head of ESG from Oracle. So we're talking about the perspective from the user center and users, especially in the office, using the software. We have Han, the director of consulting from Schneider Electric. So we'll also learn how the builders look at the building data centers in a sustainable way. And the investor side, that's going to be Kok-Chye, talking about where investors are putting money and how they're investing in green data centers. So without that, I would go to our first questions to all of our panelists. And in introducing yourself, in your positioning in that topic, would you tell us a little bit more, how do you think, are we trading the long-term planetary sustainability for short-term business profits? And can AI actually help us solve the problem?
Hey, thanks for the introduction. And let me first start by introducing myself. I'm Benjamin Ma. I head up the ESG and the private equity practice for Oracle Netsuite for Asia. And in addition to that, I'm on the working group of the ISO 42000, specifically for AI governance, and we are also exploring how do we combine AI and sustainability from an ISO standard perspective. And there's reason why we are thinking around both from an Oracle perspective and towards internationalizing from an ISO perspective as well. One here, you probably heard it from Oracle CEO, Safra, that Oracle is committed towards embedding, the key word here is embedding sustainability across all our enterprise and delivering innovation, cloud technology to accelerate meaningful change. So what this means here for the audience, earlier the panel talks about data-driven, and you know Oracle is all about data, database. But the other aspect on Oracle is on our cloud infrastructure as well. And within our cloud infrastructure, we combine the infra, which is your compute, your memory storage, and your networks processing on a hardware layer on our cloud. Two, we also combine the platform, be it the blockchain, identity management, security on our cloud as well, and not forgetting the application side of things, which is your ERP, your enterprise resource planning, your human capital management, your HCM, and in addition to that, your CRM modules. And the reason is, why are we doing that? If you take a look from, and which is this very tough question that we are answering in terms of compute AI versus sustainability, how we look at this is that it's all about energy optimization towards achieving higher productivity. And what do I mean by that? The current mode of operations is if you have separate servers on your infra, you got your separate equipments on the network perspective, and then you have separate servers on your applications and your security. And what we simply help both ourselves and our customer is to unify and simplify. That means you're unifying on a single cloud infrastructure, and therefore you are not only optimizing the use of energy, you're paying lesser for the overall total cost of ownership running an operations on-prem versus cloud. So instead of looking at it from a single silo basis, what Oracle we are looking at is on a holistic operations TCO that we're helping to manage both ourselves and our customers.
Okay, so you're trying to make it cheaper, more efficient, and unified. Okay, let's listen maybe from our engineering perspective, from Schneider Electrics, how we tackle that problem.
Yeah. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Han from Schneider Electrics, right? I mean, the rapid growth in AI and digital industry, right? Whether worth the environmental cost, I think it's not a straight yes or no answer because there's a lot of trade-off to be considered, right? I mean, to be upfront, there's different usage of AI, right? There's AI just used in organization just to improve organization efficiency, right? Or just to increase or improve the work outload or to improve customer experience, right? This type of AI application in an organization is basically just to help the organization to become more efficient and also to improve customer experience. If you look at it, do they really have a positive impact on the environment? Or they may be, but very minimum impact to the environment, right? But there's other AI, right? For example, AI used in utility and energy segments, right? They really use it to analyze the usage of energy and optimize the type of energy to be used. Or even AI in buildings operations, right? They can really use it to reduce power consumption of the building's cooling system or electrical system, right? Then you look at it, these are really the AI application that really can help, in a positive way to the environment, right? So the fact is that, the forecast of AI, power consumption for AI, right, is estimated about 4 gigawatts, right, in 2023, and it's going to grow to almost like 18 to 20 gigawatts by 2028. Okay, almost 5 years spans from now, right? And also the total power used for AI over the total power we have for data centers is now about 8%, right? It's going to go up to almost 20%, right, by 2028, right? So the fact that AI is consuming a lot of powers, right? But AI can help organizations to become more efficient, right? If you use it in energy perspective, it can really help the environment. But in terms of infrastructure, we need to adapt, we need to adopt, smarter, more sustainable infrastructure, right, to support all these AI application. That's why for all, people working or doing on sustainability or there's a commitment on energy efficiency, we really have to push more energy efficient, more sustainable technology into the infrastructure, or even adopt renewable, sustainable energy source to replace those really, emit a lot of high carbons into environments. So these are things that we need to trade off between, AI providing you operation efficiency, and also in terms of how to construct infrastructure to be more efficient to support the AI adoption.
Thank you, Han.
My name is Kok-Chye. So I'm the MD and head of Gore Capital. So we are a Hong Kong-based private equity, real estate, and infrastructure investor. and I'm in charge of the data center business within the company. So globally, we manage close to 40 billion US of assets across all the various sectors, from offices, logistics, hotels, as well as data centers. So let me try and paint the backdrop and try and answer it in a slightly different way, and why, despite the huge challenge before us, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic that AI and all this technology will be able to solve the problems that it has created, right? So if you look at this hall over the past couple of years, the scale, the magnitude has increased many times. And every time I come, I'm amazed at the new number of booths that are set up, which shows the tremendous amount of innovation that is coming through, facilitated by new technologies like AI, the new GPU compute chips that's been made available in the last 18 months, right? But I'm sure all you guys know, all of these new startups, these new companies will create data, they will create metadata, they will consume compute capacity, they will create a lot of storage requirements, right? My day job is to build and invest in data centers across the world. And when I first started out many years ago, the largest data center was a 5 megawatt data center. Now we're looking at triple-digit data centers in this region. This goes to show the amount of capital that's been poured into this industry, right? And correspondingly, you can imagine the amount of emissions that's coming out, right? Depending on who you speak, there was a recent research report by, I think, Morgan Stanley. Close to 3 billion tons of carbon is going to be emitted by the end of this decade, right? And all of this is really quite challenging, right? So what are we doing, right? Obviously, we invest in the best-in-class data centers with the most efficient infrastructure that results in most efficient use of the electricity that's been coming in. We look, because of this huge demand that's coming in, we also look at infrastructure projects, clean energy, renewables, renewable energy projects that were previously unviable, because there was no offtake. There was no offtake. Offtake means having a buyer come in advance and procure all of that clean energy. All of that wasn't possible simply because there wasn't enough demand. Now all of that is possible, right? Because there is all these big users coming in. And more importantly, as far as I'm aware, despite the huge increase in construction of all these data centers, none of the big users, the US big users, have changed their net zero commitments. So as far as I know, they are building a lot more, but they're still holding on to their net zero commitments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hear still quite positive and optimistic tone in all of the answers, and the fact that with new technologies comes efficiency and improvements. Let me spice it up a little bit more. Do data centers have a dirty secret? And I would like to ask first Han and Kok-Chye, with the AI and cloud services and the huge demand for energy, can tech sectors truly claim to be sustainable, or is it just greenwashing and buying offset credits while we are slowly heading for energy crisis? Han, would you like to tell us?
Unlike 5 years or more before, right, when there's no guidelines or no sustainability commitments that's required from data centers operators, or providers, right? But over the years, as you can see from global, there's a push from global to local to even local organization that they need to comply to some sustainability targets and be more sustainable, right? And we start to see a lot of data centers even need, to declare, right, their carbon footprint, their greenhouse gas emission in their facilities, right? For example, in Singapore, in 2019, right, the Singapore government put a temporary stop on building new data centers, right, because the Singapore government considered data centers is intensive users of water and electricity, right? And they're trying to balance between environmental sustainability and the real business need, right? That's why they put a temporary stop on the data center construction, right? After a few years, the moratorium was lifted for new data center construction, but there's condition put in place, right? The power usage effectiveness of the new data center have to be 1.3 and lower. And data center must implement technologies, energy efficient technologies and sustainable technologies into their infrastructure planning. And also, they must also comply to the building and construction authorities, the Green Mark Platinum guidelines and criteria, right? Even apart from Singapore, even in Netherlands, in Ireland, in the United States, the government also pushed policy, right, to manage and limit the growth of the data centers, right, because of this because they are intensive users of waters and electricity, right? So, I mean, to be truly claimed to be sustainable, right, I think in terms of reporting, they need to be openly disclosed, right, be more transparent. Where are all this energy being consumed, right? What are the non-sustainable resources that they have replaced with greener resources, right? Where are the improvements? They need to be transparent, right? So that the industry know where are all the data centers providers, where are they standing now? And if you are corporate, right? Your internal corporate policy, that's ESG guidelines. You need to work with your partners, right? Your supply chain, who has also ESG commitments. So data center got no choice. They also have to do that, right? If not, they'll lose business, especially working with big corporate, companies.
All right, Kok-Chye, what do you think?
think
Where's the money going?
I entirely agree with my colleague over here. And just to make a couple of clarifications and one additional point, it is not the operators themselves, i.e. the data center operators, that's actually consuming all of the energy. They are actually procuring and consuming and passing the electricity to their end clients. That's actually inside the building. So in the data center, it's typically either a build-to-suit, meaning for one client, or multi-tenant data center where the data center building is carved out into different halls. Each hall has a specific client earmarked for it, right? So the data center operator is just like a common facility with a facility manager and making sure that there's 99.9, how many nines uptime available for that site, right? So we, on the investor side, we obviously want to make sure that the data center that we invest in is best in class, but more importantly, future-proof, because the load capacities, the architecture, the requirements are changing extremely rapidly. 10 years ago, a 3 kilowatt rack was probably quite normal. Now with NVIDIA and all the other GPU chips coming in, the H series, you're pushing at least 50 or even 100 in the near future. This requires a whole rethinking of how the architecture is going to look like, right? So we look at, in order to make sure that the building is still sustainable and also at the same time not become irrelevant in the future, we look at whether the building is robustly built with enough floor loading to handle the heavier cabinets that's coming in. Right? Each cabinet, as you can imagine, is the size of has the weight of a car. If you think about it, it's not your average computer at home. It has the weight of a car, a big one, right? It consumes enough electricity for an entire HDB block sometimes, right? And these are really heavy density, and it requires heavy density cooling, right? So most data centers are still air cooled. To make it more efficient and sustainable, we're looking at liquid cooling or RDX kind of technologies, And we design our data centers to make sure that as part of the normal life cycle CapEx replacement, you can swap in and swap out technologies easily. this not only pertains to the data hall, but even to the fuel source. So for example, our generators, traditionally run by diesel, in future, possibly using liquid gas turbines, as long as the systems allow it. So we progressively manage our data centers over 10, 15 years to make sure that as soon as technologies and the risk profile becomes more acceptable, we will transition to cleaner fuels. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a clarifying question. Do you think that, because I know that you care about the sustainable data centers, but do you think that your investors care about it, or is the money the bottom line decision?
It's very important.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's great to know
It's part of the selection criteria.
That's great to hear that. Now, next question, because following what Han mentioned, the role of the government, I'm just kind of wondering, and that'll be first question to Benjamin, since you represent the industry as well, who should take responsibility and the action first? Should that be the government to lead with stringent regulations, or should the industry lead the charge?
Yeah, I would say this, right? It's about everyone's responsibility, right? And it's about coming together to figure out an ecosystem that how a public-private partnership can work jointly. And how the Singapore government is doing this, taking the first step, is really starting this journey. I want to say that it's not an immediate outcome. It's not a test assessment that you want to score 100 upon 100 today. But it's about how we're going to start this journey jointly, because each one of it have a cascading pyramid reporting perspective, from a scope 1 all the way up to scope 3 perspective, right? From a country carbon footprint perspective, to a business perspective, and now your scope 3 to a suppliers of this business perspective. So everybody will need to come together at some point of time. So like within Oracle as well, we, to my earlier point, being a public listed company, this commitment goes all within our own data-driven system itself, meaning that all our customers are able to track the utilization within our cloud infrastructure, and there's a specific sustainability reporting tab that they're able to pull out the data from the consumption from our infrastructure. So that's one. Two, as well, we have open APIs that we extend to our partners, ranging from Greenprint, of course, that we open up ERP data upon customers' permission. So that's one. Two, we also allow developers to come develop what we call micro mini app on top of our ERP platform and our cloud platform as well, to ensure that the scope 1 all the way up to scope 3 reporting to the earlier panel is all data driven, right? So what we want to account for is a full accountability, given that carbon accounting from the financial regulator perspective, IFRS would want to combine both carbon accounting and financial accounting real soon. So that's one that's important to note. Two, from a government perspective, public listed companies, to Hans' earlier point, there's a mandatory ESG reporting on an annual basis that public listed companies like Oracle and many other listcos would need to report on. And three, the suppliers. So let's talk a little bit about scope 3. I think this is probably the biggest elephant in the room that we're trying to solve. And how within Oracle we look at this is we commit to, by 2030, at least our key suppliers to start off with, needs to have the carbon reporting back to us. And moving forward, of course, by 2050, this is where SFF made a commitment to achieve net zero. Then it's mandatory for all our suppliers to provide their carbon reporting to us from a scope 3 perspective. So the way to think about this here is, on this journey, your suppliers are on this journey, the listcos are on this journey, the governments are on this journey. And taking a piece from a playbook, that's where I wear my industry development hat here, as I chair both the Tech Association from a manpower side, and I'm an exco within the Sustainability Committee. What we want to do here is to work very closely with the government to enable the sustainability-focused enterprise development grant, EDG, is being put really into action rather than just a policy basis. So from a grant money perspective, we work very closely with the government to ensure the forward-looking companies put their commitment and foot on the table first. And we work closely with them to co-create, to take a look at the real green operational projects moving forward in ensuring that there is something that is showcaseable and there is a true operations that is in action, that's accountable.
Thank you. And I really love the example you gave from Singapore. And I really love Singapore. I'm not from here, as you hear, but I really love the public-private partnership, how well that works. I'm just kind of concerned that may not be the case in other countries. And we also have, for the audience, if you haven't checked yet, check the Greenprint platform for comprehensive ESG reporting. It's something really worth looking into. Han, you've got probably also more experience from other countries in being in a global company. Do you think that example, as Benjamin mentioned, in Singapore, works in other parts of the world as well?
Yeah, I mean, as what Benjamin said, right? I mean, it's a combination of the corporate ESG working together with government policies, right? I mean, corporate ESG, I mean, is a positive steps, right? Because the corporate need to make sure they themselves have commitment within their internal employees, right? They need to drive change of behaviors, right? To make everyone, all the employees, to think sustainability, right? That's why they need to set all ESG goals. But they need government to create guidelines, standards, right? To guide them along these sustainability journeys. Right? So government guidelines or framework can be, what type of energy efficiency technologies, that need to be considered, right? What type of, is there requirements on conservative energies, right? And also to give a guideline, right? What is the level of greenhouse gas emission reduction, right? That corporate need to achieve, right? With all these guidelines, then industry-wide, they have something to follow, right? To guide them along, how to achieve from the start to the end along the journey, right? So, I mean, for corporate, for technology industry, of course, the most important also with all these guidelines putting in place is also forcing for them to invest more money, right? In research and development, right? In more advanced technologies that can help the environment, for example, come up with more energy efficient technologies, right? To support more adoption to renewable energies, right? As you know, renewable energies is not a consistent power supply that you always have because it depends on the weather, right? Whether it's wind or solar, right? With all this, you still need supplements, energy storage, right? It makes the whole infrastructure, control become more complicated, right? That's why it need technology company to know how to do this type of controls, right? To control, analyze the different energy mix, right? And to support this environmental sustainability.
You show great effort from companies being made. Maybe take one of the questions from the audience, which is related. Should governments tax AI companies or AI products to solve the problem? You're laughing. You're really entertained by that.
No, it's a tricky question. I mean, it's same as offset credits, right? I mean, the tax itself, yes, is drive behaviors, right? But I think we have to go to the really practical way, right? Whatever taxes you implement, whatever offset credit you can give, to the industry, but think in a more practical way, a more lasting, more future-proof, technology adoption, right? That even without all this penalized, right? Without all this offset credit, you are able to help the environment, right? By adopting energy-efficient technologies, sustainable technologies, replace all, heavy carbon equipments, right? With really renewable source of energy. That is something that you should be aimed and not just, rely on offset credits or, implement AI just because, there's incentive.
Yeah. I hear there are better solutions than taxes and offset credits. Yeah, Kok-Chye, would you like to add?
Yeah, I am obviously not a tax expert, but I think the complication may be where the country that's trying to impose the tax on the user and the country which is actually providing the AI service may be two different places. So it may not entirely solve the problem. Yeah.
Just a brief, I'll ask for brief answers. We talk a lot about AI because it's very fashionable. We're also preparing for the next wave, which is going to be quantum, and some of our exhibitors talk about it to a great extent. Do you think quantum computing would change much because of the possibility of processing more information faster? Any of you would like to answer? Benjamin?
Well, let me have a stab at this first, right? So now we're talking about quad bits versus bits, right? And one here, quad bits, you need very precious material to manufacture the quantum processor. So now, my quick comment is this, right? We are definitely in the initial research and development stage of quantum. It's very exciting. It shows a lot of promises towards the compute at a scale way beyond our current imagination. I think that's the excitement. However, I think will be a point of time about me wearing my private equity hat, right? It's how much does it cost, right? One, to implement it, and two, how much does it cost to operationalize it? And ultimately, how much does it cost to the end user that's going to be paying for it as well? So I think we're still on the initial stage where one, it's definitely exciting horizon. And again, similarly to sustainability, it's a journey whereby it's about identifying one, the killer app, and the killer use case, the business use case that will ultimately drive the need for quantum processing at what price, right? And just to really summarize it, it seems to be we have not officially started the journey yet, and we definitely need to take a closer look at the financial numbers.
Thank you. I have one more question about regional specialization, because that follows the comment you made about, Han, especially about renewable energy. In some places we don't have enough sun or enough wind. Singapore is beautifully positioned with neighboring countries, and that would be the question that I've heard. Their projects are already under development. Could we provide some of the energy, from, for example, where I am from Western Australia, plenty of sun, plenty of wind, trees at certain places grow horizontally because of the wind, and provide that energy, green energy, to places like Singapore, or green data center to be built there and send the compute here to Singapore to make the economy complementary. What are your thoughts about that?
If your question is whether it's possible to locate a data center at the same place where the renewable energy is created, then in certain cases, possibly yes. But also in many cases, the answer is no, because there are many other considerations when it comes to locating a data center. I mean, just give a crazy example, right? So, in let's say in the Nordics regions where there's lots of cold weather, right? So it's very tempting to put a data center over there where there's lots of free air cooling. Increasingly, actually today, it's becoming possible. because of improved submarine cable connectivity in that place. But in the past, that was unheard of, because not only does data centers need a good source of energy, they need to have good connectivity, because it needs to be located close to where its users are. Whether it's an AI data center, whether it's a cloud data center, whether it's an edge data center, the location of the data center depends on the applications that's sitting inside that building, right? Because if, let's say, you were doing online banking or high-frequency trading, you need a data center to be within maybe 10, 20 kilometers of that location because of the fiber connectivity. Data centers are also, they need highly trained people to be working that data center. They need to have good backup sources of energy. If the data center has an outage, you need diesel supplies to come in and continuously run the data center until the service is restored. So there's a whole ecosystem that's needed, and energy is just one of them.
It's much more complex than we think. Yeah.
Yes.
And there is a question that could be potentially related from our audience, and I believe that's from someone who likes decentralized systems, and that would be a question to Benjamin. How do you attract customers to invest in your cloud data center instead of setting up their own data centers?
Well, did you say that the questioner was in decentralized?
I assume so, because that would be more of a kind of your own data centers, so more part of kind of decentralized network.
So the answer lies within the decentralization, right? I mean, now if you take a look at, will one want to build data center all across the world and incur CapEx costs versus a OpEx cost, whereby you work with a cloud provider like Oracle that has global data centers already, and you just focus on your business in each of your country regulatory requirements that you want to do, be decentralization financing, you want to do decentralization, blockchain type operations, right? So I think the ROI, the return of investments based on your total cost of ownership, makes more sense to you being able to partner with a global cloud provider, and just for you to just focus on your business rather trying to do the heavy lifting and the plumbing.
There's a lot of work that you
on yourself, yes.
And I'm being aware of the time, the closing remarks perhaps from each of you gentlemen. What would be your final message? And I would ask you to maybe consider your own private opinion, if you can step out of your professional role. As a person responsible, maybe as a parent, as a member of community, what do you think about those topics personally, if you would like to send some kind of closing message?
I think we can't run away on, AI is consume a lot of powers, right? But I think there's something that we need to accelerate on our action, right? I'll look at two things. One, let's do the basics, right? And two, let's accelerate our sustainability strategies, right? Do the basic, basically, look at your day-to-day operations, right? Your corporate, whether data center operators or data center managers, right? Look at day-to-day operations, which area you are able to optimize. For example, in the IT system, are you able, right, to look at, load up your server heavier so that, load up your server to do more workload, right? So that you can actually reduce the number of servers. That means you use less and consume less power, but you can actually deliver more compute powers, right? Data centers, operators, facility manager, look at your infrastructure. Is there any inefficiency systems that you can actually address, right? So let's do the basic, right, from a day-to-day operations. Then next is to accelerate your sustainability strategy, right? Continue your effort on the ESG goals, right? Look at energy efficient technologies, replacing with renewable energy source or sustainable green energy and so on, right? Optimize the utilization of hardware, software, and so on, right? So I think these two things is really critical if we really want to drive a very positive outcome.
Thank you. Kok-Chye?
Yep. So I agree with everything my colleague mentioned. And coming from an investment point of view, if I had a wish list, if it's possible, there's been a lot of talk about investing in, say, solar farms, wind farms, and so on and so on. There's been less talk about transmission. I mean, that's plain old boring stuff, power lines, But very often that's the missing link in making a successful transition to sustainable energy, because very often the place where green energy is produced is different from where it's consumed. And a lot of the transmission grids, at least in this part of the world, is heavily regulated. There are monopolies, there's governments, there's lots of other legacy arrangements in place which prevent investors from unlocking value and providing investments in this. Thanks.
Thank you. And Benjamin?
So my final message is this: everyone is here that has a responsibility. And it is quite an important and unprecedented time that we are given this opportunity to be able to open up this new paradigm of ESG. So it's really a kairos moment that I just want the audience to know, right? That we are the pioneers, we are the founders of that's opening up a new door for sustainability. So that's the role. The second one here is wearing my manpower development hat here is, it starts from yourself, educating yourself, right? For Singaporeans, please use up your Skills Future credit, right? I think there's a lot of money. Take up a course. That's immediately one thing that you can do, so on. But for the non-Singaporeans here, it starts from your role. A very simple role to say that, hey, instead of your temperature lowering down your aircon at 19 degrees, why don't you consider 25 degrees and wear a polo t-shirt, right? And so it's very doable for everybody that we can start real actionable and take this responsibility, and not only to get educated, but also making sure that the true implementation goes through.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Benjamin, Han, Kok-Chye. It was wonderful having you in the diversity of perspectives. So please give our speakers a round of applause. And remember, we can do something right now. We don't need to wait for governments, for corporations. We can start acting now. Thank you very much.